Good morning. Welcome to the STS-40 post-landing press conference from NASA's Dryden Flight Research Facility. With us today, we have Captain Robert Crippen, Director of Space Shuttle Program, and Dr. ARNAULD NICOGOSSIAN, Director of Life Sciences at NASA Headquarters. Captain Crippen?
Thank you very much. Now, that was a great mission. And I am extremely proud of the way the Columbia performed and the way the entire government contractor team performed in executing it. Some people tell me the Columbia's got a few years on it, but machines don't fly any better than that. It behaved superbly throughout the entire flight, and its next step will be to take it and do what we call a major structural inspection on it, and at which time we'll also be upgrading with some of the modifications that we put on the Endeavor, and we'll be making it our extended duration orbiter, which will allow us to fly it up to 16 days in orbit. And this mission, as Dr. NICOGOSSIAN will tell you, is another important step in our multiple science disciplines where we've been doing planetary science, astronomy, and now we're into life science. And life science is an important step as we move forward into the space station era. And this flight was also another major step in our learning about how the human body behaves with extended duration on orbit, which we'll be doing lots of in the future. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. NICOGOSSIAN. Arnold?
Thank you, Mr. Crippen. I would like to join Mr. Crippen to tell you that this was a superb mission so far. We still have 1 week and additional data collections, which are going to complete this mission before we can analyze the results and understand what we have. I assume from the prior press conferences that you had that the principal investigators have expressed the enthusiasm and the great satisfaction. We feel that all the preparation and the crew training and the command staff structure and the leadership of the commander which went into this mission gave us more than we bargained for this mission. Of course, this mission is going to lead to the SLS-2, which is the second mission where we are going to try to complete most of the investigations that we have done. And I know that there is a lot of happy people on the life sciences side looking forward to analyze the data. We always told you a story every day. Dr. White, the program scientist, told you a story. And I would like to tell you that we had another first here. We got the crew to the examining facility in a record time this time. It's amazing that so many pieces of hardware, big and little, did work so well. And I think that the only credit that I can give is to the principal investigators, the planners, the ground crew, and the flight crew. And it was well done so far.
We'll take questions now here at Dryden, and then we'll go to the other centers. Please wait for the mic and state your name and affiliation.
Lee Siegel from Associated Press. Can either of you tell me first the condition of the orbiter, at least on first inspection, particularly the tiles, things, that sort of thing? And also there was supposed to be a speed up because of the refrigerator problem to get the blood, urine, and saliva samples off in less than the hour that was, I believe, originally planned. Did they get off in that time, and do they look like they're okay despite the refrigerator problem?
Well, I'll try it. Initially, I had an opportunity to walk around the orbiter shortly after landing, and at least from a cursory glance that I could see, it looked in superb condition. I saw very little indications of tile damage. And the last report I had was that the freezers were working just fine, both of them in the lab, and there was no reason to diverge from our timeline that we had set to get samples out, which was being done in a fairly expedited manner anyhow. Arnold, do you have any other word on that?
No, I think that the freezers did work, like you mentioned. I don't think that we have significant loss, if any, loss of data. We still will go back and analyze how the freezers performed in flight. We are going to analyze the procedures to make sure that they work the next time properly. I think people have an idea what happened, and we will share it with you when we have everything worked out. But we also plan, after this mission, to reproduce the environment where the samples were to make sure that we can compare if we have something out of range.
Do you know if the samples are okay, though?
If you can wait for the mic.
Doctor, this is Jim Skeen with the Daily News. I'm wondering if you could describe for us what kind of measurements and experiments will be carried on here in Dryden with the 4 astronauts.
I can spend the whole afternoon, morning and afternoon describing it, but as a rule of thumb, whatever was done in flight and the sequence in general, the way it was done, will be repeated post flight on the first day. And the high priority experiments which were conducted first will be conducted also. We have inserted a portion which is the crew medical exams by the flight surgeon for each crew member before they go and do the rest of the medical exams. And we start again with the metabolic data, moving to the cardiovascular and so forth, including the catheter insertion.
Okay, question there. We'll take this one first and then you.
Yeah, this is John Chandler with the Los Angeles Times. Doctor, can you give us an idea both for the human tests that have been done and also for the animal tests that have been done, how soon anything would be gleaned from those, and do you know anything right now from the things that went on during the flight?
I know what the principal investigator have seen on the monitors which was given to them, but basically it will take a while and probably up to a year to get all the data, understand how it integrates and what it all means. Of course, we have in our plan to have a quick look 30 days and 60 days report, but I will really feel that within 6 months we know where we are, and within 1 year the data will be published.
Captain Crippen, this flight was designed to learn about how people perform in low gravity or zero gravity for a long period of time with an eye, I assume, toward the space station and trips to the moon and Mars. You are, I'm sure, aware there's been a fair amount of criticism and quite a battle in the House over the space station and also about the missions to moon and Mars, whether it's really worth the billions that it would cost given the needs here on Earth. What would you say to people who have been critical of those proposed projects because of the great cost and other priorities to try and convince them that those goals are worth it?
Well, as you're well aware, the floor vote on the House supported the station, which I believe is representative of what the American public believe in, that we should be working on advanced technology programs like the station. And we cannot not sit still on technology as a nation. It is important to us to maintain the kind of standard of living that we not only enjoy, but we want our grandchildren to enjoy. And to do that, we need projects like going out into space and exploring it and understanding the universe, or we're going to be left behind as a nation. And I don't believe any of us want that. And I believe, as the House vote showed, that the Congress and the American public support that.
Yes, Carrie Moran, Mutual NBC Radio News. What did you learn in terms of the prolonged space flight and relaxation for the crew? I know they got a little antsy on day 6. Did you pick up anything in terms of how you can handle them as human beings rather than scientists in handling the prolonged exposure to each other in space?
I'm not sure I quite understood the question.
In terms of resting down the crew, I know that there was some mention of the fact that they had been working very, very hard and they needed a break on day 6. Did that teach you anything in terms of how you're going to be able to handle the human being side of the flight?
Well, we've learned that lesson several times over, starting way back in Skylab, that you can't work people 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and keep the performance up. You have to have periods where you do take some small breaks. And in fact, I believe the crew, as this mission, when we gave them what was supposed to be a day off, we gave them some options to work. And Arnold can say that they did as much on the so-called day off as they did on the normal days. So I'm not really sure this one got a rest. But when we move forward with the station, we are going to be planning regular work periods and regular rest periods. That's a lesson that's been learned time and time again.
Bob Scott from CBS. Doctor, a couple of questions. One that's asked of me frequently, why the jellyfish? And two, what did you observe while they were there, and what next with them?
Well, I think Dr. Spandenberg was at the press conference and gave her view about that. But the jellyfish has an interesting mechanism to control its behavior and its motions in the water, and that's the deposits of calcium, which provide for balance in the jellyfish and orientation. The calcium is also plays an important role in every living system, especially the higher organisms like humans who have calcium calcium plates in their inner ear, and that's what gives us at least partially our orientation and how we perceive the space around us. I think that what we are looking in the calcium is that to understand if calcium itself, what role it plays in the transduction and in the understanding of the gravity and perception of orientation. And that's why we are looking at the calcium. The other plants will depend on whatever, the second part of your question, depends on whatever will be found. We think it's a good model to study calcium, and if that proves so, there will be other experiments more sophisticated on with jellyfish.
Okay, we'll take one more question here, then we'll go to the Kennedy Space Center.
Pete Demetrio, KFWB Radio. Doctor, we've had 30 years of manned space flight. There have been biomedical experiments on a lot of those flights. With SLS-1 and you've mentioned SLS-2, how many of these missions are we going to need before we can rewrite the book and say this is definitively what happens to human beings in long-duration exposure in space? Are we seeing, what, 3, 4, 5 missions before you're satisfied you have all the data you need so we can go to Mars and come back safely?
Like scientists and biologists, I'm never satisfied with 3, 4, and 5. They always want more. And so I will leave that question here. But let me answer really your question. I would like to tell you that really we had a lot of space flights. As you know, the Soviets flown up to 1 year. We seem that there are people flying 4 months and 6 months, and we have flown 3 months in Skylab program, and we are flying up to 10-day missions and things like that. But if you look at the statistics of how many people flew what length of period of time in space, you will find probably about 30 people flown long-duration mission, and say long-duration mission in excess of 20 days. If you look at the rest of 290 people or whatever, they have flown missions of 15 days or less. So a lot of our data and knowledge is acquired from short-duration missions, and long-duration missions we don't have enough data to understand. In the prior space flight, as we were going and looking at what we should learn, we usually were measuring endurance and endpoint. With this mission, you are right, we are writing history. And because we are looking at the mechanisms, how the things start, how they progress, how can you look at those trends and understand what you can predict. Because adaptation in human body does occur to space flight. Some of it is good, some of it is bad. So for long-duration missions, especially Mars missions, where you go when you are not in low Earth orbit and you go far out, what you want to do is to enhance the good adaptation process and to prevent the bad adaptation. And I think we are writing history right now.
Okay, we'll go now to the Kennedy Space Center for questions.
This is Irene Brown with Florida Today. I have 2 questions, and I apologize if the first one you've already answered. But when will you know if the body fluid samples are okay?
What samples are okay?
We think they're okay. And it will take another 2-3 hours to find out, and I'm sure there will be some press release for your information as we find them out.
The samples have been remained frozen, and they're still frozen for one knowledge, so there's no reason to be suspect that there's anything, but they're fine.
Okay, the second one is for you. The NASA won a significant victory last week with the space station vote, but if the money isn't found to pay for that right now, will there be any effect on space shuttle operations from cutbacks next year?
Well, that is certainly something that we have to work through the rest of the budget decisions that have to be made in Congress to decide how much money we end up with. And we'll be looking at all of our programs to decide how we ought to allocate depending on what monies we get at the end. So that's an iterative process and will be going on through the rest of the year, so I can't give you a direct answer.
Sure, we start here with you, Orlando Sentinel. I've also got a couple of questions. First, any indication at all what effects, if any, there were with that environmental seal?
The environmental seal on the payload bay doors, that's the one that you're speaking of. Best of our knowledge, everything looked completely normal in the closure of the doors. The payload bay door, when it came down, we got our ready-to-latch indications, and when we closed up the bulkhead latches, which are the ones on the aft, it came down and indicated closed. So I don't suspect that we're going to find any that it caused us any problem, and it showed that the analysis the whole team did to say that we were okay was correct.
But no one has actually looked from through the space lab window or anything to see whether there's any...
Oh, no, well, Jim Bajan was looking at the time that we closed the door.
After landing?
And did not see anything anomalous.
Okay, the other question is, Dr. NICOGOSSIAN, you mentioned that the crew members had been taken off there in record time. Do you know exactly how much time it was from the time they were in the orbiter to the time they got to where they're going to be examined?
I think a little bit over 15 minutes.
Well, it was 26 minutes from the time out of the orbiter into the crew transport vehicle, and I don't have the exact time, something like that. And the crew transport vehicle is what helped make that possible, plus the crew being in good shape.
Dan Billow, WESH-TV. That's what I want to ask you about. That's a pretty fancy vehicle you've got there. Is it really necessary? Couldn't the crew members be put in a normal van, recline there, and be taken to whatever medical facility you're taking them to? Could you also tell me how much it costs, and will it be used again?
The vehicle, which is the same type that are used in several airports around the country, allows the crew to walk off on a level environment straight into the vehicle and not have to come downstairs, which is sometimes a problem when you don't quite have your land legs. Plus, it also allows, if the docs want to set up any kind of medical test inside, they can do that. So I believe it's a real significant addition to the shuttle program, and we'll be looking at whether we want to get another one, for example, say at the Kennedy Space Center.
Okay, we'll go now to the Johnson Space Center for questions.
This is Rita Rubin from the Dallas Morning News. Just a couple of questions about the crew. First of all, since we couldn't see them, I just wondered if you could just give us a general idea of how they were feeling when they got off the shuttle. And how long a ride was it from the shuttle to the facility where they'll be undergoing more medical tests?
I saw the crew when they got out of the crew transport vehicle, and they were in good condition. And I'm not sure. I would have estimated somewhere in the 15 to 20 minute range.
That's all the questions from JSA.
Okay, fine. Now, we have a couple more questions here at Dryden. Several more. We'll take questions here.
Alan Silverman from Voice of America with a question about landings back at Florida. Given the experience that's been gathered and also the couple of successful landings in this past year, what is the prospect for regularly scheduled landings back at Florida?
Good. In fact, I'm holding a program-level meeting next week on Wednesday to decide if we want to take the next flight, STS-40 back to Kennedy nominally. I believe we're very confident of the new brakes that we have on the vehicle, the carbon-carbon brakes, and with restricted weather conditions to ensure that we don't get into problems, I feel reasonably comfortable, and I'm going to review that with the entire program and come to a decision on it.
There's, first of all, what was the cost of the people mover? Someone else asked that and didn't hear the answer. And
Do you have that number? It was around in the 200,000,
Right.
250, somewhere range.
Okay. And the bigger question is, for years now, a figure has been given rather loosely as a rough estimate for a shuttle mission of about 250 million, but lately in print I've seen some columns somewhere saying that if you divide the shuttle budget by the actual number of missions that are flown, it's closer to $1 billion per flight. Can you shed any light on that?
Well, it depends on how people want to rack up costs for missions, and you can find people that will cut it various different ways. The shuttle budget at this time is running approximately $4 billion a year, and if I can fly 8 flights, you can figure out what that is. If I can fly 10 flights, you can figure out what that is. But there is some base that you're almost going to be carrying with you, whether you're flying any at all. So.
How many flights will there be?
We were shooting for, depends on how we've ended up. If you're talking calendar year, I believe we're now talking 7 flights this year. When we had the ET door problem, we ended up losing one out of the year. I'd better go back and check that number, trying to rather do it by memory, maybe 7 or 8.
Bob Moon, AP Radio Network. For Bob Crippen, can you tell me a little bit more about the modifications that Columbia is going to be undergoing once it gets back to Palmdale, and specifically the modification to extend the missions and why that's needed, that sort of thing?
Sure. A couple of the significant mods that help out what I was talking about earlier for landing at Kennedy, we're putting a drag chute on it, which the Endeavor has, and we're putting redundant nose wheel steering, which is, gives us both electrical and hydraulic redundancy, which puts it, gives us more margin from a landing safety standpoint. And there are several minor mods going on as well. From the extended duration capability, we're trying to get it up to 16 days. The main thing that requires is additional cryogenics to power the fuel cells that we have, which ends up being one of the prime limiting factors. And the other is scrubbing carbon dioxide out of the air. We use lithium hydroxide canisters for that now, and we're going to a different way of doing it. And also our waste management facilities need to be expanded to be able to handle extended durations on orbit, as well as crew storage. So there are several different factors that all do work there together.
Can I follow up just on the landing modifications? You're comfortable going into Florida even before all of those modifications, the chute and that sort of thing?
Yes, the drag chute and the redundant nose wheel steering give us more margin, and I might up the crosswind limits and some of those kinds of things once we get those on board. But with restricted weather limits, I'm comfortable with the current system we have now, pending hearing all of the presentation that I'm going to get next week.
Yeah, this is John Chandler with the LA Times again. Can you give us a mission or a target date for SLS-2, and also a little bit of a brief overview of the history of animals participating in space shuttle missions?
I'd have to pull out my manifest to see the date we currently have SLS-2. Do you have it?
I just put around May of 93.
It's in 93 time frame.
Around that time frame. As far as the history of the animals in the space shuttle program, it's not the first time that they're flying animals. We have flown rodents as part of the student experiments. We have flown rodents and primates on SL3, and we have flown rodents and jellyfish on this mission.
As a follow, is this only the second mission? How many prior missions have there been where animals have been involved, do you think?
I believe about 3 or 4. I have to find that answer for you. I can't remember, but it's more than several.
Thank you.
Okay, if those are all the questions, there will be a crew photo opportunity. Time yet to be determined, but probably around between 2 and 3:30 that will be carried on NASA Select. And that will be with the commander, pilot, and one mission specialist. And thank you for attending.